The second year after my biological parents brought me home, our entire family was dragged into a horror game. It started with a whisper, soft and seductive, and a rope of pale light dropped from nowhere. A voice, breathy and amused, asked, "Am I beautiful?" A girl, her face a porcelain mask of mischief, rolled across the floor like a toy come alive, picking someone, anyone, to take her place in the show. She stared at the familiar room, at familiar faces, and laughed. I screamed and clapped my hands over my eyes. "Big sis, bro. What are you doing?" someone whispered, brittle with panic. The seductive figure froze, then, with a terrible, almost casual grace, pulled her clothes back on. Limbs that had been grotesquely wrong slipped into place until she looked perfectly normal again. The room breathed. "Little sister, how did you get back?" my mother cried. Then a mechanical voice cut through like a command, flat and final. "Attention all players, you have entered the horror game. Current scenario, Greenwood Town. Difficulty level, this scenario is a dungeon. Mission, survive 10 days. Player count 10. Good luck, players." When the voice finished, I stood stunned. One moment I had been at home, getting scolded, trading barbed compliments with Lily about exam scores, watching her cry because her college marks were lower than mine. The next, terror swallowed everything. I had always seen things others could not. A ghost doll perched on Lily's shoulder, a pale female spirit clinging to her back like ivy. I wiped my tears, and the room shifted. We were no longer in our living room. Besides our family of 5, there were 5 strangers, scattered like puzzle pieces that belonged together. Lily trembled and hid her face in our mother's arms. "What is this place? Where are we?" she whimpered. Dad moved instinctively, protective and fierce, his body shielding Ethan as if he could turn himself into a shield. My father, always steady, now seemed small, eyes darting, searching for something solid. I stood to the side, watching. The strangers looked like they knew one another, 3 men and 2 women clustered like an inner circle. One of them, a man with a long, ugly scar across his cheek, scowled and spat. "Damn, 5 new players teleported here at once. Useless newbies just crying. Shut the hell up." I moved forward on instinct, picking the woman whose smile seemed least like a threat. "Excuse me, do you know where we are?" I asked. She arched an eyebrow, sharp as flint, and her voice cut through the tension. "Well, look at that, a newbie who can actually talk." Her gaze slid to Lily, pity laced with annoyance. "This is the horror game. People with strong desires get pulled in. Think of it like a dungeon. Survive, you earn points. Points buy anything, your life, money, power, anything you want. Fail and you die. Become fertilizer for the horror game." Her eyes softened for a heartbeat when she added, "I'm Victoria Hayes. Call me Vicky. Stick with me." Relief warmed my chest like sunlight. She was hard-edged, but something about her cracked exterior felt honest. "Okay, thanks, Vicky. I'm Luna Clark, call me Luna." Text, thin and alien, floated before our eyes. "SS level dungeon," it read. "These guys are toast," it said, gray. "What town has 3 bosses? Survive 10 days, lucky to last 3. Newbies got lucky, snagged Vicky's protection already." "Vicky, how can I see this?" I asked. "You can see it too," she said, surprised. "To boost survival rates, the horror game is live-streamed. You can glean info from the chat." I nodded, dizzy with a new, terrible clarity. The iron gates ahead groaned open. We stepped into an old, picturesque town that felt like memory and nightmare mixed. Greenwood Town looked painfully familiar, like the town beneath the mountain where I had lived before my biological parents found me. Even the stone lion at the entrance, its corner chipped away, matched the one I knew. Then the game announced the next twist, the words crawling across the air. "Greenwood Town is during the annual Weavers Festival. Performances fill the stage. The base girl is limbless and suffering inside the base. She seeks a new base girl to take her place. The base girl appears in 30 seconds. Find cover immediately. Victims will become the new base girl. The show begins in 10 minutes. Good luck, players." Panic became motion. People scattered, searching for hiding spots. Vicky shoved me into a wardrobe in a nearby house, then, with a backward glance, pulled Lily and our mother in after me. We crammed into the cramped darkness, for bodies pressed together, breath shallow and loud. Vicky frowned, clearly thinking, but there was no time. She forced herself into the tight space, gritting her teeth as if she could squeeze away the danger with sheer will. Outside, something rolled and sang, a voice like glass and laughter. Green hills rise, it sang, words warped and wrong, following the tune of some children's song turned inside out. The rolling sound approached, an eerie giggle weaving between the houses. Are you hiding here? Is it here? He. It stopped at the door. A sharp laugh, like a knife, cut the silence. Found you. A man's scream erupted then, a sound that ripped through whatever composure remained, raw and horrified. No, my mother sobbed, burying her face in her hands. Nathan. The chat exploded, mercilessly indifferent. Survivors left 9. 2 players dead within 2 minutes, people typed, fast and cold. That son shoved his own dad out to save himself. Someone else mocked. The transformation was brutal, the descriptions vivid and obscene, limbs torn, bodies reassembled into the base scene. The rawness of it made Lily scream harder, clinging to our mother as if to hold the world together. For a flicker, I felt the old stab of pain, the echo of past betrayals I'd lived through since they found me, the beatings, the accusations, the nights I had cried myself to sleep. The pain flared, then receded, strange and distant now, as if someone else's memory had brushed my skin. The gurgling started again, this time stalling right outside our door. A chilling, mocking voice cooed. Anyone hiding here? Come out, come out, come out. Pipes creaked, dust trembled. Lily went rigid beside me. Vicky's hand tightened, a signal to be utterly still. The chat was a chorus of strategy and cruelty. She's bluffing, someone typed. Don't open the door, someone else warned. This boss is smart, knows how to bait. Pick a sacrifice. The girl won't revisit her room after a kill. A heartbeat later, Lily and Mom exchanged a look I could read, without words. They shoved me out, a sudden hard shove that sent me stumbling into the room. Vicky lunged, surprise and fury on her face, but she missed. I staggered forward and came face to face with the thing that had been singing. The room smelled like rain and old porcelain. She was beautiful, impossibly so, a flawless porcelain body crowned with the head of a stunning woman. Her eyes were dark and empty in a way that felt like being swallowed. When our eyes met, something inside me unclenched. Tears flooded my vision. Big sister, I whispered, my voice cracking. How did you end up like this? Her laugh was soft, like bone against silk, and it chilled me to the marrow. The porcelain face tilted, studying me with those hollow eyes that seemed to hold depths I couldn't fathom. For a moment, something flickered there, a ghost of recognition, perhaps, or the shadow of who she'd been before this transformation consumed her. The expression was so familiar it made my chest ache with memories I'd tried to bury. But whatever humanity remained passed like smoke and wind, replaced by that terrible, empty hunger that radiated from her perfect form. Little sister, she whispered, her voice carrying the melody of that twisted children's song, each word carefully enunciated like she was savoring the taste of them. You remember me. My throat closed, the words I wanted to speak trapped behind a wall of grief and disbelief. This thing wearing my sister's face, this beautiful nightmare crafted from porcelain and pain. How could I not remember? The sister who had held me through thunderstorms when the foster homes were cruel, who had taught me to braid wildflowers into my hair during those brief moments of peace, who had promised we'd never be separated again. Maya, who had disappeared one rainy Tuesday when I was 7 years old and never came home, leaving me to face the world's cruelty alone. Maya. I breathed, and the name felt like broken glass in my mouth. Her smile widened, revealing teeth like scattered pearls, each one perfectly formed, but somehow wrong in ways that made my skin crawl. I've been waiting for you to come back to Greenwood Town, Luna. Waiting so very long. The game brought you home to me, didn't it? Just like I knew it would. The casual way she spoke of it, as if my torment was inevitable, as if this nightmare was somehow a reunion, made something cold settle in my stomach. Behind me, I heard the desperate scrambling of bodies, the whispered panic of people trying to make themselves invisible. My family, no, my adoptive family, the people who had just thrown me to this monster without a second's hesitation, were trying to creep deeper into the wardrobe like insects fleeing light. The irony wasn't lost on me that they were hiding from the very thing they'd fed me to, cowering in the shadows while I faced the consequence of their betrayal. The chat flickered in my peripheral vision, a constant stream of commentary from invisible observers who viewed our terror as entertainment, Boss is stalling. Usually kills immediately. Personal connection detected. Luna might survive this encounter. Chat's getting interesting. Family drama in a horror game? This is premium content. Maya's porcelain had swiveled toward the wardrobe with predatory interest, and I could see the way the shadows seemed to bend around her, as if darkness itself was drawn to her presence. "The others," she said, her voice turning sing-song and predatory, each word dripping with malice. "They smell like fear and betrayal. Such delicious flavors, so rich and complex. Shall I collect them, little sister? They pushed you to me like an offering. Perhaps they understand the rules better than you think."
No.
The word came out stronger than I felt, surprising even myself. There was steel in my voice I didn't know I possessed. They're mine to deal with. Maya's laugh tinkled like breaking glass, musical and sharp enough to cut. "Oh, little sister. You've grown cold since we last spoke. I like that. The scared little girl who used to hide in closets has become something harder, hasn't she?" Her empty eyes seemed to see straight through me, reading truths I hadn't acknowledged myself. The game changes people, strips away the pretense, reveals what we really are underneath all those polite lies we tell ourselves. She began to roll backward, that unnatural porcelain body moving with fluid, impossible grace, as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions in her presence. The sound of her movement was wrong. Too smooth, too quiet, like silk sliding over marble. The show must go on, but not yet. Not yet. There are still 8 players left, and the festival has only just begun. The audience expects a full performance. Maya paused at the doorway, that beautiful, terrible face looking back at me with an expression that might have been fondness if it weren't so utterly inhuman. The moonlight caught the perfect curve of her cheek, highlighting the craftsmanship that had gone into her transformation. Or was it mutation? Find me at the theater when you're ready, Luna. When you've decided what kind of person you want to become in this place.
We have so much to catch up on.
I want to hear about all the families who tried to love you, all the ways they failed. Her words hit like physical blows, each one precisely aimed at old wounds I thought had healed. She knew. Somehow, she knew about the foster homes, the rejections, the desperate search for belonging that had led me to this family who had just proven they valued my life less than their own comfort. "Maya, wait." I started, but she was already moving, rolling away into the night with that haunting grace. Her voice drifted back, carrying that twisted lullaby. "Green hills rise, where children hide, but sisters never truly die." The melody faded until it was just wind through empty streets, leaving me alone with the weight of recognition and the terrible knowledge that my past had followed me into this nightmare. I stood there in the sudden silence, trembling not from fear but from the overwhelming crash of emotions I'd thought I'd buried years ago. The familiar ache of abandonment mixed with a new, sharper pain. The realization that Maya had been here all along, transformed into something monstrous, while I'd spent years wondering if she was alive or dead. The game hadn't just thrown me into a random nightmare. It had orchestrated this reunion with surgical precision, using my deepest wounds as weapons against me. Slowly, like someone emerging from deep water, I turned to face the wardrobe. 3 faces peered out at me from the cramped darkness. Mom, Lily, and Vicky. The contrast between them was stark as daylight and shadow. Mom and Lily looked ashamed, their faces pale and drawn, but underneath the shame I could see something else. Resentment. They'd expected me to die. They'd counted on it. And now that I had survived, that I had somehow negotiated with a monster and lived, they didn't know what to do with that reality. They looked at me like I was something alien, something that had shifted beyond their understanding. Vicky looked furious. Her green eyes blazed with an anger so pure it was almost beautiful, and when she climbed out of the wardrobe, her movements were sharp with barely contained violence. "You absolute cowards," she snarled, her voice low and dangerous. "You fed her to that thing like she was nothing, like she was disposable." "We didn't know," Mom started, her voice weak and pathetic in the aftermath of what we'd all witnessed. "Bullshit." Vicky's word cracked like a whip, cutting through any attempt at justification. "You knew exactly what you were doing. The moment that thing showed up, you made a choice. You chose to save yourselves and sacrifice her. Don't you dare try to pretty it up with excuses now." The chat commentary rolled past my vision like a river of cruelty and fascination, family dynamics getting spicy. Vicky's got backbone. Luna's the key player now. Anyone else notice the boss didn't kill Luna? Personal connection theory confirmed. This is better than soap opera. Lily crawled out of the wardrobe like something broken, tears streaming down her face in rivulets that caught the dim light. Her hands shook as she reached toward me, then fell back as if she'd lost the right to touch me. Luna, I'm sorry, I was scared, I didn't mean to, I just panicked. Yes, you did, I said quietly, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant and cold as winter wind. You meant every bit of it. You saw danger, and you chose to push me toward it. That wasn't panic, Lily. That was calculation. The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. I watched her face crumple, watched the realization sink in that there would be no easy forgiveness, no simple apology that could undo what had been done. For years I tried to be the perfect adopted daughter, grateful and accommodating, never pushing too hard or demanding too much. I'd swallowed their subtle reminders that I was lucky to be there, that I should be thankful for their charity. But gratitude, I realized, had its limits. And they had just found mine. Dad and Ethan emerged from whatever shadowy corner they'd been hiding in, their faces pale with shock at seeing me not just alive, but apparently unharmed. The complete family unit was whole again, everyone accounted for, except for the gaping wound of trust that had opened between us, a wound that could never be stitched closed because it had been inflicted deliberately, with full knowledge of the cost. We stood in that cramped, dust-heavy room, and I felt the fundamental shift that had occurred in our dynamic. The old Luna, the grateful adoptive daughter who bent herself into whatever shape would earn their approval, was gone. In her place stood someone harder, someone who had looked a monster in the face and found recognition there. Someone who understood that survival might require choices that couldn't be undone. I was no longer begging for their love or acceptance. I was the one who could see the chat, who could read the game's hidden messages. I was the one Maya, the boss, had spared. I was the one with answers in a world that had suddenly become incomprehensible to them. I was the one with power. The silence stretched like a held breath until a new sound broke it, a metallic scraping from somewhere above us, like claws on stone or rusted metal being dragged across cobblestones. The sound was rhythmic, purposeful, and it sent ice through my veins. Whatever was making that noise was hunting, methodically working its way through the town. The chat lit up immediately with warnings and commentary. Second boss incoming. Mimic type. Sound-based hunter. High intelligence. This one's tricky. Copies voices to lure victims. Players need to coordinate or they're dead. Luna better step up or this party's over. More text scrolled past. Mimic weakness. Simultaneous loud noise disrupts its hunting pattern. Timing has to be perfect. All players must act together. Cooperation required. Ironic after that betrayal scene. I absorbed the information while that scraping sound grew louder, more distinct. The mimic was close now, maybe just a street away. Soon it would be testing doors, calling out in voices we might recognize, trying to lure us into the open where it could claim its prey. Mom's voice cracked as she looked at me with desperate, pleading eyes that reminded me uncomfortably of a dog that had been caught stealing food. Luna, you can see the chat, can't you? What does it say? Please, what do we do? The irony was so perfect it almost made me laugh. Almost. They had just used me as human bait, pushed me toward a monster to save themselves, and now they were begging for my help. The same people who had treated my abilities as delusions and embarrassments for years were now desperate for the information only I could provide. I looked at each of them in turn, these people who had given me a home but never truly made me family, who had just proven that their acceptance came with conditions and expiration dates. Mom, with her carefully arranged concern that couldn't quite hide the calculation underneath. Lily, still crying but already angling for forgiveness she hadn't earned. Dad, shifting uncomfortably as if he could somehow distance himself from what the women had done. Ethan, young enough to be confused but old enough to understand that something irreparable had broken. Then I looked at Vicky, who had tried to save me, who was positioning herself between me and them even now like a human shield. The only one who would show me genuine loyalty in this nightmare. The scraping sound grew closer, accompanied now by a new noise, a soft calling, almost musical. Help me. A voice drifted through the walls, high and sweet and terribly familiar. Please, someone help me. I'm hurt. It was Lily's voice. Perfect in every detail, from the slight rasp she got when she cried to the way she drew out the "in please." But Lily was standing right here, her face going white as she heard herself calling from the street outside. That's impossible, she whispered. The chat exploded. Mimics testing. Using emotional manipulation. Classic move. Don't fall for it. Help me. The voice called again, closer now. Mom?
Dad?
Luna? I'm scared. Something's chasing me. I could see the way my family's faces changed, the automatic response to what sounded like a family member in distress. Even knowing it was fake, even seeing Lily standing right there, their instincts were to respond, to help. The mimic was good at this. It understood human nature, understood the bonds that could be weaponized against us. Dad actually took a step toward the door before catching himself. That's not me, Lily said, but her voice shook with uncertainty. That can't be me. More scraping, and now the sound of something testing door handles. The methodical progress of a predator that knew exactly what it was doing. I could let them suffer. I could watch that fear eat them alive the way it had eaten me when they shoved me out of that wardrobe. I could withhold the information and watch them make the wrong choices, just as they had chosen to sacrifice me. The thought had a dark appeal that surprised me with its intensity. But Maya's words echoed in my mind. You've grown cold. Was that what I wanted? To become like them? To choose survival at any cost? To let others pay the price for my safety? The game was testing more than our ability to survive monsters. It was testing who we chose to become when everything familiar fell away. The chat offered strategy, escape routes, weaknesses. Information that could save us all, or that I could hoard for myself. For a moment that stretched like eternity, I held their lives in my hands the same way they had held mine moments ago. I could feel the weight of that choice, the tempting darkness of revenge. Then I made my decision. Listen carefully, I said, my voice carrying the authority of someone who had just stared death in the face and lived to tell about it. Because I'm only going to say this once, and if you don't follow my instructions exactly, we're all going to die in the next 10 minutes. The room went dead silent except for that approaching scraping sound. The thing outside is called a mimic. It hunts by copying our voices, our words, anything it thinks will make us open a door or come outside. It's already started with Lily's voice, but it'll cycle through all of us. When it finds our hiding spot, and it's going to try every psychological trick in the book to get us to separate or panic. I paused, letting that sink in while the fake Lily continued to call from outside, her pleas becoming more desperate, more heartrending. The only way to defeat it is with a perfectly timed, simultaneous loud noise from all of us. Not almost simultaneous. Perfect timing. One person off by even a second, and it won't work. The sound disrupts its hunting pattern long enough for us to either escape or for it to move on to easier prey. Vicky nodded grimly. She understood tactical thinking, understood that survival sometimes required perfect execution under pressure. But here's the thing, I continued, my voice growing colder. This requires trust. Complete trust. We all have to act together, on my signal, without hesitation.
Can you do that?
Can you trust the person you just tried to sacrifice to save your lives? The silence was deafening. Outside, the mimic had apparently given up on Lily's voice and was trying a new approach. Now it was Dad's voice calling out, strong and authoritative. Luna, get away from those people. They're not your real family.
Come to me.
I can protect you. Dad flinched, as if he'd been struck. It's using our own bonds against us, I explained. Everything it says will sound reasonable, will hit exactly the right emotional buttons. It's been doing this for a long time. Now Mom's voice joined the chorus from outside. Sweetheart, we made a mistake.
We're sorry.
Come out and we'll talk about it. We'll make it right. The irony was suffocating. Even the monster was offering me more consideration than they had. So here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice cutting through the psychological noise. I'm going to count down from 3. On 0, we all scream, not shout, scream, as loudly as we possibly can. Doesn't matter what you scream, just that it's loud, and we do it together. Ready? Wait, Mom said, her voice thin with panic. What if it doesn't work? What if? Then we die, I said simply. But if we don't try, we die anyway. The mimic is already at the door. And it was. The handle was turning slowly, deliberately, and through the crack I could see something that might once have been human but was now all wrong angles and impossible joints. The scraping sound was coming from claws that had replaced fingernails, dragging across wood and stone as it tested surfaces. 3, I said, and my voice was steady as stone. The door creaked open an inch. Something that looked like an eye peered through the gap, but the eye was in the wrong place, set where a mouth should be. 2. Please, the thing whispered in my own voice, perfect in every detail. Please let me in. I'm so scared. They hurt me. Please. Hearing my own voice pleading from that monstrosity's mouth was like being gutted with ice. 1. The door swung wide, and the mimic flowed into the room like water, its impossible anatomy rearranging itself as it moved. I saw limbs that bent in directions that violated physics, a face that was somehow everyone's face and no one's face all at once. 0. We screamed. The sound that erupted from 6 human throats was primal, desperate, the kind of noise that came from the deepest part of the survival instinct. It wasn't coordinated or pretty. It was raw terror and determination given voice. Vicky's scream was sharp and fierce, a war cry. Mom and Lily shrieked in harmony, their voices cracking with strain. Dad and Ethan bellowed like wounded animals. And my own scream felt like it was tearing something loose inside my chest, releasing years of swallowed pain and rage and fear. The mimic froze mid-step, its fluid form suddenly rigid. For a heartbeat that lasted forever, it stood there like a broken toy, its impossible face cycling through expressions of confusion and pain. Then it began to vibrate, faster and faster, until it was just a blur of motion and malice. The sound it made was indescribable, like metal tearing, like glass breaking, like the last breath of something dying. And then it was gone. Not disappeared, but collapsed, folding in on itself until there was nothing left but a small pile of what looked like shed skin and broken teeth. We stood there in the aftermath, breathing hard, staring at the place where death had been standing just moments before. The silence felt different now, not oppressive but clean, like air after a thunderstorm. The chat was going wild. Holy shit, that actually worked. Perfect timing. Luna's got leadership skills. Family's lucky she didn't let them die. Vicky and Luna make a good team. But I barely registered the commentary. I was focused on the faces around me, reading the mixture of relief and something else, a new understanding of exactly how much they needed me and how easily I could have chosen differently. That, Vicky said quietly, was impressive coordination for a group of people who just tried to kill each other. The words hung in the air like an accusation, because that's exactly what they were. We had just worked together perfectly to save our lives, which made their earlier betrayal all the more deliberate. They could cooperate when they chose to. They simply hadn't chosen to when it was my life on the line. Thank you, Mom said, her voice small and broken. Luna, Don't. I cut her off. Don't thank me and don't apologize. We did what we had to do to survive. Nothing more. Because that's all it was now, survival. The bonds of family, artificial as they had always been, were severed as cleanly as if cut with a blade. We were no longer relatives trying to protect each other. We were allies of convenience in a war zone, and alliances could shift with the tide of battle. Ethan, who had been silent through most of this horror, finally spoke up. His young voice cracked with confusion and fear. Luna, what's happening to us? Why is this place trying to kill us? It was the first honest question anyone had asked, free of manipulation or hidden agendas. Just a scared kid trying to understand why his world had turned into a nightmare. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw someone who hadn't chosen to betray me, who had simply been caught up in the wake of others' decisions. Maybe there was still something worth saving here. I don't know everything, I admitted. But I know this place, Greenwood Town. It's where I lived before you all found me. And I know the game isn't random. It brought me back here for a reason. I paused, considering how much to reveal. The truth was a weapon now, and weapons needed to be used carefully. The boss we just escaped, the one who looked like a porcelain doll, that was my sister. My real sister, from before the adoption. She's been trapped here, turned into something else. And I swallowed hard, the words tasting like ash. I think this whole scenario is designed around me, around my past. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the silence of people waiting for instructions. This was the silence of people realizing that they were bit players in someone else's story, that their fates were tied to mysteries they couldn't understand. So, what does that mean for us? Dad asked, and for the first time since this started, his voice carried no assumptions about leadership or authority. He was asking, not demanding. I walked to the window and looked out at Greenwood Town spread below us, its familiar streets now twisted into a maze of death and memory. Somewhere out there, Maya was waiting for me at the theater, along with whatever other horrors the game had prepared. 8 players remained, and we still had 8 more days to survive. It means, I said without turning around, that if you want to live through this, you follow my lead. No questions, no debates, No more desperate attempts to save yourselves at my expense. I'm the one who can read the game's instructions. I'm the one the bosses recognize. I'm your best chance at survival. I turned back to face them, and I knew they could see the change in me, the hardness that had crystallized around the soft places where their betrayal had cut deepest. But understand this. I'm not doing it out of love or loyalty or family obligation. I'm doing it because keeping you alive might be the key to getting out of here. You're useful to me now, but usefulness can change. The words were cruel, but they were also honest in a way that cut through all the polite pretenses we'd been hiding behind for years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn their approval or prove my worth. I was simply stating the terms of our survival. Vicky smiled, a sharp, approving expression that told me she understood exactly what I was doing and why. She'd been surviving in places like this long enough to recognize the cold mathematics of staying alive. "So, what's our next move?" she asked. I closed my eyes and focused on the chat, looking for information about what was coming next. The text scrolled past in a steady stream. Day 1 complete. Players remaining. 8. Next challenge in 6 hours. Boss pattern suggests escalating personal trauma. Luna's going to face her past, whether she wants to or not. More messages flowed past. Maya's not the only boss connected to Luna. Check the festival program. 3 performances scheduled. 3 bosses. This is going to get ugly. And then, chillingly, final boss isn't on the program. Hidden boss unlocks when Luna confronts the truth about why she left Greenwood Town the first time. I opened my eyes to find 6 faces staring at me, waiting for direction from someone who was making up the rules as she went along. "We find shelter for the night," I said. "Real shelter, not just a hiding spot. Tomorrow the game gets harder, and we need to be ready." As we gathered what few belongings we had and prepared to venture back into the nightmare streets, I caught my reflection in a broken mirror propped against the wall. The girl looking back at me had my face, but her eyes were different. Colder, more calculating. Maya had been right about one thing. The game did change people. It stripped away the pretenses and showed you who you really were when everything comfortable fell away. I was still Luna Clark, still the adopted daughter who had tried so hard to belong. But I was also something else now, something harder and more dangerous. Something that could look at the people who had raised me and see them clearly for what they were. Not family, but strangers who had offered conditional love and withdrawn at the moment it became inconvenient. The girl in the mirror smiled, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant expression. Outside, Greenwood Town waited with its festival of horrors, its twisted memories made manifest, its promise that the past could never truly be escaped. 8 players remained, and somewhere in the shadows, Maya was preparing the next act of our reunion. But I was no longer the scared little girl who had left this place behind. I was someone who had survived betrayal and found strength in the breaking. Someone who could read the hidden messages and negotiate with monsters. Someone who might just be dangerous enough to win this game, no matter what it cost me. The only question was, what would be left of me when it was over?